than she thought. She said probably about 1:30 or 2. She's still at doctor's
Oh,
appointments.
all right. Well, that's fine. She doesn't need to report to me when she starts.
Yeah, but she knows you think she's coming in, so she wants to let you know.
Well,
So you don't worry about her.
all right. Is this?
Right, Peter's not.
And Steve, I'm not sure about Matt.
And here's Matt.
And Matt's here. Hey, Matt. How you doing? What? Dave is online, sort of. Dave, can you hear us okay?
More or less. I am driving, so there's a little bit of road noise.
Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen. I'll plug in the other microphone here, and so it might cut out for a second, so just bear with. Did you call me back? Did I? I didn't mean to.
Oh. And then I repeated it.
That's my dad.
Yes. And I knew that.
Okay, is that better, Dave? All right. Okay, Dave, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, barely, but that's okay, as long as you can hear us. I'm recording this meeting too, so
That's
I'll
cool.
send you a copy. I need to get this angle down here where you can actually see us. All right, there we go. Okay.
You can't see me because somehow I turned off the camera and I can't drive and turn it back on.
That's quite all right, David. I think it was answering rising Christ's cards, so when we get a chance.
Oh, that safety first.
I'm not sure we go to. I think I'll be of course.
I'll ask.
Some layperson that's supposed to be in charge.
Bill, correct.
Mm-hmm. That's why I can't. I did. Like I intended to give it to Peter, and I didn't do it. I provided you with a couple of articles from David Luss, who always has nothing nice to say about it. So I'm not going to read those at David. I thought they were good enough to share. I guess I'll start by reading Peter's stuff. I really need to learn how to print this stuff out. Good gracious. Oh well.
Turn on the long.
Oh, wait, yeah. I've got the printer set up. I just in a hurry. I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing.
Oh yeah, I love David Luce.
Yeah, he's good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. This is from Peter on the Luke 14 chapter. The pericope only calls for us to read the second of the two stories. I may have sent out Greek for both stories. I've abbreviated it for us to take just the second story, beginning in verse 7. Actually, I've got one extra verse. But let me read to you from Peter's stuff. We are all beggars, of this I am certain. Martin Luther's dying words. By the way, does anybody know the context for that? Luther was returned to Eisleben, his hometown, to adjudicate a dispute between two brothers over an inheritance. And he had apparently written this note stuck in his pocket to refer to later when he was going to meet with them after church. He was preaching that morning at his home congregation. Well, not the one he was baptized in, but the one across the street from it, literally across the street. And he was preaching on Matthew 10. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give rest. And right in the middle of that sermon, he collapsed and carried him off and died, I think, the next day. And that, apocryphally, this piece of paper fell out of his pocket while they were carrying it. Now, I don't know how true. They were all beggars. That seems to be apropos of what he was there to do, to try and get these two brothers to reconcile. John Pilch points out that for the first century, mere behavior in meals was very important. This might well be the reason that observations on table and hosting and guesting etiquette are common in the Gospel of Luke. Here are a few. Everyone watches, whether one washes before supper, Luke 11:58, who eats what, when, and where, Luke 6:4, what is done or omitted at table or in preparation for eating, Luke 7:38-49, Who is invited? Luke 14:12-14. Where people sit? Luke 14:7-11. That's the case. With whom one eats? Luke 15:2. And in what order persons of different rank come to the table? Luke 17:7-8. In the parable that follows our reading today, it becomes obvious that sometimes one must turn down an invitation. One does so for a very simple reason. Once one accepts the invitation, one is obligated by Mediterranean and Eastern custom to reciprocate. If one cannot, it is better to find a reason to say no. It is supported a caste system in this habit. A host invited those who had hosted him in the past and would host him in the future. Inviting anyone significantly below one's own rank, status, or caste was futile and seen as foolishness. But what does God do? There are no other gods to invite who will be able to host him in return. There are drawbacks in being the Lord Most High, whose name is so holy it is not spoken. If the Almighty invites someone to eat at the feast of the kingdom of God, it will be clear to that someone that they are invited to an occasion for which they cannot make a return invitation, and it makes no difference who that someone is. The rich have no advantage on the poor in this respect. If one was to act here on earth as one who took one's cues from how God handles things in heaven, who would one then invite? There you are, Dave. The answer is somewhat obvious. Anyone. Because reciprocity would be meaningless, since it seems to be meaningless to the Almighty. A person's dignity is in the invitation of the Father in heaven, not in the capacity of that individual to invite in return. The honor of the Almighty is kept by the Almighty and not by social convention. It is consistent with God's honor of humble heaven in the person of Jesus. This humility is what Jesus will invite the disciples into later in the chapter. But that is next week's reading. Though this is not a Eucharistic text, it does have implications on how we view the Lord's Supper. There we are invited to eat at the feast of the kingdom of God, Luke 14:17. Yet we come as radically insufficient guests. We have nothing to reciprocate it with, really. We come responding to an invitation that echoes Isaiah 55. Yet at that meal we ourselves do come to be hosts in a sense, surely those to whom the Lord joins himself at baptism, those who take in his presence in the host of the Eucharist, host the Lord in some respect as they depart from the altar. But what hosts we are, faulty and fragile, without holiness or needs. Exactly the failures that make earthly hosting impossible. In a way, the texts of the Eucharist are about human dignity. A dignity that is not resident in the human form, but is, to use 1 Peter's language, kept in heaven for us, safe from rust and decay. Our dignity that invites us to the feast is in the eye of the Creator and Father of all. As Paul writes, there is no boasting, Romans 3. We are called from the least rank to the table, 14:10, to sit in higher places than we can imagine. We are all beggars, of this I am certain, whose timeless wisdom. Yet we are beggars and have been called from our places of begging at the door, Lazarus, to higher places, places we do not dare claim, 14:8, but places the host of hosts bestowed in the hope that we might host him, not in splendor, but in our humility. For humility is the Lord's great strength. Comments? Questions? Observations? Dave, where are you right now? If I may ask. David? David? Can you hear me? Yeah, so David, can you hear me? Tommy, can you hear me? All right. Nope. I guess he can. Or he's not paying attention. He's hoping that we're going to record this, which we are. Comments, questions? This is a sociological view or theological view, I take, but not really sure what it's kind of thinking. Isaiah 55 is the Old Testament text for us.
Is it?
No, it's Proverbs.
Proverbs.
Yeah. And Hebrews.
Okay. Yeah, Hebrews, we're continuing our reading. Yeah, I'm done with Hebrews.
What do you do with this when people don't always throw dinner parties anymore?
Well, that's a good question. I guess we have to refer to the dinner party with we throw out. But what does it say about our?
I mean, the people in the pews, it's like,
I know.
yeah, I don't know.
Well, you're instructing them about what ancient customs were, why this text is needed, but still, I don't know if that's always the most. I mean, I love to talk history. That's
It's educational, but that's rich.
well, like I say, we always talked about the reason why we have the Eucharist. Kruse regularly, in that God chooses to host us at his table without expectation. So that kind of goes to the Romans 8, nothing can separate you from God, and we kind of practice that in how we administer the sacrament. On the other hand, it does also go to the heart of the argument that some people in our church are having about what is the limitations of the meal. Because I'm a very traditionalist about this, about baptism being the kind of the limiting factor. My argument is that Jesus didn't throw open the doors. It was amongst his inner circle. So it's not an inappropriate discussion. But I have to acknowledge that this is the strength of the argument on the other side, which is the meal is meant for everyone. But it goes back to what you just said. So what if you do open everyone, but there's no context for it even in our culture? Nobody can force the meals. What's the point? Radical hospitality has to have context. So anyway, I don't know. It's
Cupcakes for the soccer team.
cupcakes for the soccer team.
Somebody's done.
Kool-Aid fish for the little kids to come forward. Why not?
The only thing that jumped out at me to connect to today is like thinking you're better than somebody else. Play on that instead of
In church.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
The story I'm using Sunday sermon is when Jeff and I were in Taiwan and we crashed a wedding.
Oh yeah.
Not once, but twice.
Yes.
And we were made to feel like their wedding, and their banquet, it was at their banquet, so, and it would not have been complete had we not been there, and we had not been invited. So that story just goes.
Yeah, I think when you told me, I think we were sitting over a meal and you told me
Yeah,
the story must
yeah.
have point out for you. And then I shared back with you our experience, my experience when I was second time in Israel. And we were on the Sea of Tiberias, Sea of Galilee at Tiberias, and we're having our pita fish out of the dock. And all of a sudden, like the evening is beautiful, it's a typical Galilean evening, and all of a sudden you hear the music, and it's like this Greek wedding just kind of spilled out of the house and surrounds. It was Greek, obviously, it was Hebrew, but they were just having. And it was like, we're part of we're part of the wedding.
You're part of it, right?
And there wasn't anything like, oh, well, you guys eat your fish. You don't mind if we have a wedding right? And it was like they're talking to us and they slap us on the back, and I have no idea what they're saying. But that sense of you're part of the
Right.
You're not. We moved to you, but you're a part of the crowd. You're part of the group.
That happened when they want to use class reunions.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because we had it at the Presidential Banquet Center.
Oh.
And there are classmates of him that are a group. And so we have Louie every time they get together. It's a little older each time and a little more out of tune. But we were having them all. There was a wedding next door. They heard the music. They came over and they said, "You're having much more fun than we are to enjoying it." It was probably his 45th class reunion, a bunch of old dudes.
Cool. The first part of the Moses, I'm not reading it, but he actually picks up in the coach honor and shame context as well. And his first thing is preaching this sermon to the youth. So the young people in the congregation said, this is the sermon that should be directed to them, because they're the ones who understand honor and shame in real time better than the average adult. You got bullying, you've got cliquishness, all these things are part of the culture. Now we don't have a significant number of teenagers in our congregation there. That might, but then but I like the take you said, I would recommend it that you read it. If you go to the page 2, you see down here, where and this is what Rosie likes to do. He likes to engage the congregation in some kind of a challenge, or I've used a few of his things in the past. I invite you to ask your youth fairly pointed questions. Trust me, everyone else will be listening. What would it be like to invite a kid who seems always to be alone to sit at your group? And that's kind of a new thing along in schools, you know, where they have the tables are so closed. One of the unintended consequences of going to small table. We used to, when we were in school, we used to have long tables, like prisons. There was nothing action, because we were served on the metal trays like prisoners. It was. But when they went to small tables with the idea of engaging conversation, what happened is that you ended up creating cliques. So you have one guy sitting at a table and 12 people gather. And that's the thing that happens on Wednesday night.
Oh, yeah. Oh, right.
Yeah, we see it happen where you congregate in the small table. What would it be like to reach out to someone who is very different? What would it be like to get your seat on the bus out on the way? So, Kruse was saying this, and I can imagine Rosa Parks going on everything accidentally said in first class. So, okay. What would it be like to stop someone from bullying significantly? What would it be like to post on Facebook something kind about someone who really gets noticed? What would it be like to invite someone that doesn't often get invited to a party? Tweet a quotation or verse or 13th of this week's reading about looking out for others. What would it be like if someone asks you why you're doing this because it's what God wants? Those are good questions. I read that whole lesson and think it's really good what he does there. And then the second one is more of a prosaic, probably more along the lines of how ours was. And on this last page of that, about 3 paragraphs down, it says, once I said, plug this in on page 4. In our family, growing up on Christmas morning, we named one of the 5 kids. As they get older, we just always. And that child got to distribute all the presents to the rest of the family. While this never seemed like an enviable role to play when we were very young, after all, it meant delaying opening your presents, those presents of the year anyway. As we grew older, it became perhaps the most enjoyable part of our Christmas celebration because there's something simply joyful and frankly unbeatable fun about giving to others out of a sense of abundance. I think that's good. That's good stewardship for that. So anyway, coming back to your reading. While we're taking a break here, before we go into something else, it's occurred to me that Peter and I have been doing these things for a very long time. I sort of don't mind doing that next. Of course. So when we did that because it got down to just one. I know there's more of us here. There's 6 or 7 of us. What we used to do before that was we would be the primary comparison. I would still prepare Greek, but I wouldn't print it out for everybody. So if that's a change you'd be amenable. In the future, we just say, encourage you to be responsible for doing on me. No. Don't have. But it's good sermon rather than the relax. Sometimes you don't, the sermon's already ready. You got a lot of good information. And, that was good. So anyway, give us some thought. I'll ask the question. Peter's not here, so we've written so many things we now have. And it's time for other people to start having.
So does Peter use this as a sermon or the
No,
sermon?
I think he writes it as a devotion for his people, and he goes online under a blog called From Jerusalem to Jericho.
Okay.
The road from Jericho to Jerusalem. And then he always has posted my Greek there, and that's been a weekly discipline for him for years. When we first started LSIM, he was already doing it. And so he would then add the Greek to it as I had it. So that's what he's got. He's got a whole bank. He's got like 11, that's 8 years of Greek, 8 years of devotions. Occasionally he'll write it, and I always update the Greek. I should say always. Usually. But it's a lot easier to start with something you've already written and start from scratch. Right. A lot easier. All right. You ready to go to Greek then? Interesting thing about Lucan narrative writing that he writes like Esau. He has, it's like all these series of short stories. Never those describes family. Maybe the Brothers Grimm would be a better example. They began all of their stories once upon a time. He begins every one of his stories with Kaya Genomai, Kaya Genomai, which is the Greek way of saying once upon a time. It came to pass. And every time that he wants to start a new idea or a new story, he begins it. So when you're reading through Luke in English and you say it came to pass on the Sabbath, which we have here, it means that he has got a new story that he's received, intact. And underneath this, there's two extra stories, which we're only dealing with the second. But the context for these stories, apparently, from his point, is the same set. Both of these in the home of a prominent Pharisee. And I like this one. Kinos archonton Pharisaion. Archonton is the significant word. Archos, meaning the ruler. Archonton, meaning hyper-ruler. So I say that probably the closest parallel we have is the bishop. You know, this is a bishop who's got all of the rabbis, of whom Jesus is one, at his house for dinner. And so Jesus is observing as like a pastor of a forest congregation at the bishop's table. I just think that's an interesting concept. And he was being carefully watched. And I think the Asan or Tuermenoi, which comes from Eritreto. So this is where you in the Greek military. Greek language comes from three areas: worship, military, agriculture. That's all of this. This comes from the military. This is the military church. So when Joshua sent the spies to scope out Jericho, to survey this. So Jesus is under surveillance. They're watching. I just think that they know he's not. And then verse 6 is actually part of the previous story. So let's go down to verse 7. When Jesus is making observation, he noticed a take home from Epexo. He noticed tous eklemenus, the guests, those who have been, and eklemenus is from the same word as ecclesia or eklektos, meaning those who've been chosen or invited. So ecclesia are the chosen ones, invited ones. So I think that it would not be inappropriate here to make a parallel in the Greek. But Luke does this often as a commentary on church, on history. Those who are ecclesia are held to a standard of behavior, and that's what the story is about. So those who have been invited, the ecclesia, the gathered ones, are picking their own seat, and that's the violation of protocol. And how interesting is it, all the people to want to lift up what we would consider to be a hoi polloi, a faulty value system. That Jesus is the one that says, all right, you want to be this way, then let me use this history. Oh, how interesting. I guess Dave must have arrived. Yeah, he must have arrived. So he notices that they're all vying for the place of honor, and he then tells this parable as a result of what he's seen. Now, here's my question as an academic. Has Luke received this parable to which he is now putting into a context? So is verse 7 Luke's words? Or are they the words of the one who shared the story originally? It does matter. Because if Luke is making this commentary, if he's saying Jesus said he noticed this story, he's making a commentary on the church. If this is a story that came out of Jesus as Luke has it, which is also equally likely, then we're talking about Jesus making a commentary on his own context, his own synagogue. So, and it does shape your interpretations. And he talks about a wedding feast, and that's gamus, upo gamus, and that's specific because that comes from, no, that's right, that's a married woman, gamus, and the banquet hall is where the gamus takes place. Kataklithes, do not possess, literally, kataklino, and may have been, hey, Eklamenos, there's that word again from ecclesia. A more distinct, a place of where somebody more distinguished than you has been invited. So there's a whole honor shame, context here in a single sentence. Let me see. Go to verse 11. Everyone who exalts themselves, upsalu, that is one of those, it's not a hot, it's a rare word in the Greek. One who is elevated means, this is a religious word. It means when you lift up praise, you lift up somebody. So this is somebody who is seeing themselves as praiseworthy. Not that they're in an elevated societal status. They see themselves as better than you. So going the way they see themselves as better than you. And the thing that's being subliminally said is that Jesus is asserting this person really is better. You're taking the place of somebody who really is your superior. Now, what's the context of that? I'd be interested to find that out. But as Luke is referring back to the Magnificat, he who humbles himself, that the Lord will humble the proud. That's the story that begins Luke, where Mary is in the Magnificat, the one who humbles the proud. And then you have in verse 12 the notion of being repaid. Anatapadoma, hatos. Antapadoma, repaid. Do not invite for the sake of being repaid. And so this is where Jesus is making comment on the whole honor shame system. He's calling the whole context of the society into question. And then he uses the word makarios in verse 14. Reciprocity is not the basis for blessedness or happiness. And I think that goes to what Mosi is saying about being is the one who passes out gifts. That the giving away, we're blessed to give and to receive, which is how this is the one who is able to provide the place for them less than giving and call them to a higher place. That's where you will receive your happiness and cards. All right, that's all we got. Unless you have questions.
Yes, I did indeed get there.
Okay. You didn't
I don't know
whether you heard us or whether you were just
it was kind of tough. It does say that it's being recorded, so I'll hope that you can send me that file. That'll help a lot.
The files are coming by email, and we're also recording the meeting, so you'll hear the whole conversation.
Yeah, I know that I've already gotten the files.
Okay.
Interesting reading this morning. My preaching point this weekend, it may be a audition for a possible interim. I'm not positive of that. They said goodbye to their 20-year tenured pastor last Sunday, and I've got 3 Sundays in September to preach to them. So it's going to be interesting to see if that's what I'm just guessing that.
So don't screw it up. Right?
That would probably be about a 18-month gig.
Okay, that would be the start. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. Where's this at, Dave?
A place called Union Lutheran Church in Leesville, South Carolina.
Okay. How big is it?
Oh, it's about a 20-minute drive.
No. How large the congregation worship?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's hard to hear sometimes. I'm getting mature, don't you know?
No idea what that's.
100. They average 114 on Sunday.
Oh, that's good sound. Yeah.
It's one of those 2 or 3 churches in that corner off the lake that historically, while they're out in the middle of nowhere, they continue to gather a large number of people.
Okay. Great. Well, good luck, or God's blessing, or whatever.
Now, who knows? I'm guessing that that's what that is.
All right.
It's based on how I was asked. The bishop asked me to ask you if you will take 3 Sundays in September at this church. That sounds like it.
That sounds like it.
It's not like, yeah, that's what sounds like an audition. this is a good set of texts, and if I'm going to be there 3 weeks, I've already looked them up. It's an awful lot of these texts. Last Sunday, this Sunday, next Sunday has to do with etiquette for the Sabbath.
Yes. Indeed. Anybody else? We're gonna want to join in. I don't preach.
How are you, Nate? Where are you preaching? Are you at Arise?
And Tom is at your place.
Yeah, he's gonna talk on Thursday. Can't remember what things look like. And person who is the altar assistant, I'm gonna have to do rail communion because she was built on Sandy Oxton. She got fell over during communion last week. That was like every week. It's just a whole.
But at least you're there, right?
Sometimes.
Well, I know. Well, that's true, but sometimes it's high praise anymore, right?
Well, she's home with her kids' grandchildren, and she would probably bring them around the church.
So you might have a function.
No. Whenever someone's home to take care of the grandkids, so she goes to church. She's not
Oh, I
church.
see.
She's home around the corner taking care of the grandkids.
I see. I see what occurred actually.
Oh, heavens, no. And her son grew up in the church.
That explains a lot.
And water.
Oh, yes. Well, Kurt has a fundraiser coming up. That's in.
Last Saturday is 28th.
We'll get a word out for that. I just read your email this morning briefly. We need to have tickets to sale for that. Is that how that works?
You just go to the website, you can get the tickets from there.
Okay.
There's no physical ticket.
Oh, I
Except,
see.
like after they order it, then it prints out.
I got it. Okay. So I just need to get the website information out.
Right.
I already sent it to you.
Excellent.
Thank you. Few people have bought tickets already, and I'm assuming more people will pick up as the day gets closer, but
Yes.
get the information out. Anyway.
Yeah, we just started to get it out. So.
Yeah.
And I'll pass that. Get that on our Facebook page. Okay. I think just this week I think I shared that page. So, it'll be some nice because it's a fundraiser for the 20 days.
So the money that trades will go to the Senate office and I'll distribute it.
Sorry, I don't have more to say, but.
I find that hard.
No, I'm sorry, I don't have more to say. Oh, by the way, shut the hell up.
Second coming.
I love you too, Dave.
Is it happening yet?
Dave, are we on for this Thursday or when? I've lost track. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. It's amazing that you have nothing more to say. I'm marking my calendar now.
Oh, I see. Well, that was a mistake. Okay, no, it's not this Wednesday. Not this Thursday. So. It's shame. September. Yeah, I missed the August. I apologize.
Well, I'm gonna say goodbye. They haven't called me yet, but I'm in their parking lot and I need to charge the phone for a little bit.
All right. We will see you online next week, and I'll send this.
Yeah.
You. All right.
I appreciate that you're sending the recording. Appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Bye
Take it.
now.
Bye-bye.
So I found out something